All right, fire 'em up!
We got a new Fantastic Four trailer today, and I gotta say, it's kind of fantastic. Pun intended. What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Alexander, the voice in the void, the lone wolf, your favorite host with the list. How the hell are you? This is the Twee'quel podcast, and today we're going to be talking about that new Fantastic Four trailer that we got a little earlier today. And when I say a little earlier, I should say a lot earlier, because that thing dropped at like 8:30 this morning. And I tried my best to stay up and watch it and wait for it to roll through. But I was expecting it to start right then, but it didn't. And we wound up with this 1 hour long countdown. I passed out. I went to sleep. But it was a great trailer. So I want to talk about it, give you my thoughts on it. We're not going to show any clips of it because, not spoilers, but, copyright. I'm not trying to get in trouble. But we are going to talk about it. I'm going to give you my thoughts on it. But if you do want a full breakdown of it, remember to check in Saturday for the new episodes of the podcast, new full episodes of the podcast, I should say. And we're going to talk about that trailer and a handful of other things. But without further ado, let's get into it. So first off, looking at the trailer, you have to know that this is not the 1960s from our timeline. What we are looking at is a 1960s that is from a completely different universe, completely different timeline, and it's more futuristic. Yes, they have a lot of the fashion from our 60s, but if you look at the buildings, look at the cars, look at a lot of the technology that they have, especially Herbie, their robotic assistant, this is very futuristic. This is an alternate timeline where the 60s went a completely different way. Yes, like I said, it's just like our 60s when man is going to the moon for the first time, which leads to the subtitle of the movie First Steps, but it's also a completely different and more futuristic look at it. And honestly, when you look at the trailer and compare it to the old comics, then this very much looks and feels exactly like the comics when the Fantastic Four was first introduced. And to me, that is a really good thing. The multiverse saga has failed so much over all of the films and TV shows we've gotten so far in the multiverse saga, because all they've done really is give us different versions of different characters, when really they should actually be giving us different worlds, complete different version of worlds from our own. And then when we get to the end of the multiverse saga, pushing them all together and doing exactly what's in the comics. But we really haven't gotten that. Yes, we've seen glimpses of those worlds, and we've walked through a couple of them in multiverse of madness, but we really didn't get a chance to get immersed in them, to feel for the characters, to get to know the characters that inhabited the world. So that's the reason why it's failed. And to look at this trailer, this is going to give us a whole new world. It's characters we know, absolutely, but it looks completely different and feels different. We're going to like these characters, get to know them, and the portrayals of them so far are really good, and I just cannot wait to see what we get when the film does come out. Character designs are absolutely fantastic, down to the blue and white of the uniforms. Yes, in the comics, the blue that people mostly know for the Fantastic Four is a lot darker, but I think the blue in this one kind of looks more like a sky blue, and the white, it looks closer to the original comics when the Fantastic Four first debuted. But the main thing is that the aesthetic of this film and how they are being portrayed is that this version of them in this futuristic 60s era in a completely different universe, it's a lot more hopeful. So that blue is more like sky blue instead of a more of a darker earthy blue. And it kind of talks to how this is supposed to be a more hopeful time in this era, but exploration as they like blast off into the blue sky in their rocket ship, which leads to them getting powers and coming back to Earth and being heroes. I like so much of their uniforms. I love the fact that Pedro Pascal is playing Reed Richards. I had my doubts when they picked him. I really wanted John Krasinski, but to see him in this trailer now, fantastic casting. And he looks and feels and talks like Reed Richards from those comics. He looks like the Reed Richards that would be in that era. Vanessa Kirby, everybody, even Moss Rockback, every single person playing in this trailer thus far looks like the comic version, and I am totally surprised. I was not expecting that. I was expecting something a little bit a little bit more modern, but they said no, this is set in this era. We are going back straight to that era, and not just the era of the 60s within the movie, but they went back to that era of the comics, and they portrayed those people from the comics in this film. Now, I don't know what story they're going to portray, but I have an idea. I think they're going with the 3-part issue of the Galactus saga when we first meet Galactus, and which is one of their very first stories in early Fantastic Four comics. And John Malkovich being in this, I don't know who he's playing. He looks like one of the Cold Era villains. I'm losing the name right now, but he could be actually playing Mo Man just in this one. It just has a kind of a different look before he turns into this version of him. Mo Man's right here if you don't know. I don't actually know what the story is. Like I said, when we go through the full breakdown of it on Saturday, I'll tell you what story that line I think they're actually going to use. Listening to the trailer, one of the big things I love about it is the music. The music feels like it's in the 60s, but it feels very epic, very large. It gives me feelings of watching the Loki series, which I know we all love, but the music itself gives me that sort of epic storyline going on. It gives me that sort of feeling. So I am in love with the music thus far. And the one thing that I heard that I have a feeling a lot of people are going to, I'm not going to say dislike, but they're going to have a problem with, Ben Grimm does not have that relative, very gruff New Yorker style accent that everybody has come to love over the years. I still love the version of Ben Grimm that was played by Michael Chiklis in the first movies a bunch of years ago, and I loved his voice. I was like, he very much inhabited Ben Grimm. The design of his costume and the suit and everything maybe wasn't up to the liking. This one is design of his face and everything looks very much like the comics, and I love it. But his voice doesn't fit as much as everybody is going to like. But for me, it's okay. Ben Grimm is always meant to be Jewish. It wasn't actually thrown out in front until maybe, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago in the comic, but he was conceived to be Jewish, very much Jewish. Even Moss Rockbach is Jewish. This is how he sounds. It's fine. Let's not dwell on how his voice actually sounds in the film when he's talking. Let's see how his character portrayal, let's see how his character portrayal is going to go, which Ben Grimm needs to be a guy who is very much a good friend to Reed and everybody else. He literally the Rock, no pun intended, of this foursome. He's the person who always keeps everybody like, hey, I know it seems bad, but it's going to get better as long as we stick together because we're a family. Sue is the heart. Reed is a man who is the smartest man on the planet, but his emotional intelligence is basically nil. He doesn't have any, basically. And Johnny is supposed to be more teenagerish, not frat boyish like we got with Chris Evans in the first couple of movies. But he's very much a teenager, very immature. I mean, even in the comics, he's reading comics. So as long as they have those portrayals, cool, how Ben's voice and how their voices may come across versus what we see from the cartoons or from the other films, let's not get bogged down on that. What we are looking for is really good portrayals. And thus far, just from this teaser trailer, I think their portrayals are going to be spot on to the comics. Another thing that I absolutely loved, we actually got to see Galactus, and Galactus is not some gigantic, funny-looking cloud. Yes, we actually got to see his shadow looming over New York City, which is not the New York City skyline that we would know from the 1960s. Again, this very much looks like a completely alternate universe, more futuristic version of the 60s. But we got to see his shadow looming over New York City, and we got to see the back of his head as he stares down the Statue of Liberty, which in the comics, that is part of where Galactus and the Fantastic Four have a standoff. So I'm looking forward to that. The fact that they actually got him in this, physically in this film, not some gigantic cloud, not some overarching looming threat that we don't actually get to see. He's physically in this trailer, which means he will be physically in the film. Perfect. That is what we're supposed to see. Yes, Galactic is so big he can eat an entire planet, but he does have the ability to shrink himself down, to look at things, to interact with things. One of the major things inside of comics, every time he encounters the Fantastic Four or Reed Richards, Galactus will shrink himself down to talk to Reed face to face. Yes, he won't get as big as a human. He'll be much, much larger, but he will be on the planet physically standing there talking to Reed because he respects Reed's intelligence. So the fact that they have him in the trailer where he's just standing there looming over the city where we can see his shadow and to see the back of his head looking down at the Statue of Liberty, that right there, that's a thumbs up. And I am so glad Marvel decided to go with that instead of some funky looking cloud in the sky. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. We did not get to see Silver Surfer anywhere in this teaser trailer. Now, are we going to get another full trailer at the Super Bowl? That is the actual rumor that is going on. And there's also a rumor that we may actually get to see Kang in a cameo at the end of this. Maybe even get to see Robert Downey Jr. as Doom somewhere in a after credit scene at the end of this. Whether those pan out, I don't know. But we did not get to see any version of the Silver Surfer in this at all. We know for a fact that Shia LaBeouf version of the Silver Surfer will be in this one. But there's also talk that Norrin Radd will also be in this one as the Silver Surfer. We don't know. It's not shown in the teaser. Whichever one we get, it's fine. It does not matter. You got to remember, if this is a completely different universe in their own thing, whether it's Norrin Radd or Shia LaBeouf, is fine. But we just need the Silver Surfer to be the herald of Galactus. Remember, in the comics, there was a point when Galactus was angry at the Silver Surfer and trapped him on Earth. He basically took away his powers and basically trapped him to keep him there, and decided to have all these other heralds. Shia LaBeouf was one of them, and he's had quite a few others over the years. However that's going to play out, it honestly, to me, Silver Surfer in this one didn't even need to be in it. If we just had Galactus show up, be defeated by the Fantastic Four in whatever way, maybe like the comic, you never know. The Ultimate Nullifier, you never know if that's going to be it or not. As long as that happens, the main gist of it, the main meat of that story is fine. Whether we have Norrin Radd or Shia LaBeouf is one way or another. Honestly, I would rather have Shia LaBeouf in this one if we're just going to wind up destroying this universe and moving everything into the 616 and slamming everything together once we get to the end of this. I would rather get rid of that one because that's what's going to happen. You're going to have whatever versions that we have in this one, they're all going to be wiped clean and started over. So if they're going to have Shia LaBeouf in this one, just to wind up getting rid of it toward the end of the entire multiverse saga and then start everything over, I would say good. Have that one get wiped out and start over with Norrin Radd once we get into it. But that's just how I feel about it. But the fact that we didn't see her or him in this trailer at all, that tells me that I think that that's what's going to happen. But we shall see. And let's cross our fingers that we actually do get a second trailer on the Super Bowl. So the last thing I want to talk about actually happens at the very beginning of the trailer. So toward the beginning of the trailer, we actually get to see that everything that is going on at the Baxter Building, which we actually do get to see in this one, which is where the Fantastic Four is being based in this film and pretty much every other film. Everything that's going on with them is basically being funded by what's called the Future Foundation. Now, in the comics, the Future Foundation is a team set up by Reed to teach the very gifted of the young going forward. Peter Parker winds up in the Future Foundation and eventually winds up as part of the Fantastic Four for a short run. But the Future Foundation was also a team of young heroes, and they had their own little mini adventures inside of comics. So my thing is this one doesn't seem like a team set up by Reed. It seems like a worldwide think tank for very smart people to come together to figure things out. And as part of that think tank, we see Reed doing mathematical equations later on inside of the Future Foundation in the trailer, and he's writing on a blackboard. Also a good take. I'm glad it's very much a blackboard. He's an academic, and this is a thing in the past, so he wouldn't be writing on some futuristic whiteboard or anything like that. He would be using a blackboard and chalk. But a lot of the calculations with a little arrow pointing saying different universe, that points to something that we saw in What If. Remember in What If, Uatu was on trial and he said, hey, I only helped them this one time and I only interfered. And somebody looked down, and one of the other watchers looked down at him and said, this is hardly the first time you've tried. What about Reed Richards? So what if what happened in What If, that time when he helped Reed Richards, we see it in this film where something is trying to keep the Earth from being seen by Galactus, to keep it from being destroyed. Because guess what? That's exactly what happened in the comics. When Galactus first shows up at Earth and he sends the Silver Surfer in, it's first being hidden by one of the Watchers, which is exactly what was being alluded to in What If. So what if we actually do see that, and that leads us into Doom, which leads us into the end of the multiverse saga when we have the big fight on War World? I don't particularly know, but the fact that they had the Future Foundation, they had this thing in What If where they say, well, you helped Reed Richards at one point in one of the universes, and then we have this version of the 60s era of the Fantastic Four in the film. All of these things line up from the comics. So I don't know, like I said, I don't particularly know which story they're going to do. Like I said, when we come back and talk about it on Saturday, and I'm going to lay out everything that I saw and all the little Easter eggs that you might have missed, I'll give you my thoughts on what story I think they're going to do. But for right now, that's it. I'm so glad you decided to check in, and I'm very glad that the podcast is finally back. Had a lot of things going on. I even broke one of my cameras, but that's a completely different thing. But that Fantastic Four trailer was fantastic. Like I said, no pun intended. So I want you to tell me in the comments what you thought of the trailer. What was your favorite part? And don't forget, remember to check back in on Saturday, and we'll break down the whole thing, and I'll give you a bunch of Easter eggs that I found that you probably would have missed. And for now, it's time for us to get out of here. So we'll end it the same way we always end it. God bless. I love you, and peace. See you next time.